Hello, thanks for joining today, and I hope you are doing great. In today's video, we'll cover the Nexus 3 repository with nginx serving as reverse proxy to our Nexus 3 Docker container, and also nginx will hold our SSL certificate. Now, this is one of the famous architecture, and yet I have to go through several blogs and technical write-ups to get this thing implemented. That gave me a thought that maybe I have to come up with a solution which is easier to implement. So this is how our architecture flow looks like, where user is directly gonna interact with nginx, and nginx will act as reverse proxy and take our requests to Nexus 3 Docker container. And then on Nexus 3 Docker container, we will also host our Docker proxy and Docker hosted registries. Docker proxy will further be backed by Docker Hub. Alright, so our goal is to spin Nginx and Nexus 3 Docker container with SSL implemented. Also, we are going to create Docker proxy and Docker hosted registry over Nexus 3. From learning perspective, we'll try a bit of OpenSSL. We'll take a look at those commands. They are generating the root certificates, root keys, and they are also generating Nexus key and certificate. Then at point number 2, we are gonna also learn Nginx and Nexus 3 implementation with Docker containers. In general, we are going to use some Docker Compose YAML file. Then point number 3, we are also gonna learn SSL implementation in general. And point number 4, Docker proxy and hosted registry creation over Nexus 3. And we'll also see things in action such as pull and push commands. All right, so before we start with our game plan, there are few gotchas in this complete implementation, which I will bring at the appropriate time during this execution, just so we all can remember those points well. In general, our game plan is going to be that first of all, we are going to take a look at our resources so we understand the scripts and Docker Compose YAML and the complete setup that we are going to do. It is really important that we understand what we are executing. Then we will take a clone from the GitHub repository. The URL for GitHub repository will be available in description section. Then we are going to execute our shell script. We verify the execution of shell script. We will create Docker registries, hosted and proxy after that, and then ultimately we'll verify the actual implementation by performing commands such as Docker pull, Docker push. The prerequisites for this is OpenSSL. If you are using Mac and or Linux, then most likely OpenSSL is already available into your laptop. Then you would also need Docker and Docker Compose installed into your machine, because we will run these containers for Nginx and Nexus 3, and Docker Compose is what we are going to use for the ultimate implementation, so that Nginx and Nexus 3 will work as a service. Then last one is our download resources. So basically you would be needing Git also into your server to execute the command git clone, but if you don't have Git, you can just go to the GitHub website and you can just download the code as a zip, and you can use it that way also. All right, so now we can switch over to our GitHub repository to take a look at the resources. Inside the scripts folder, we have Nexus nginx proxy shell script. Okay, so we'll take a quick look at the major commands those are being executed as part of this shell script. And as I always recommend, it is really important that before we execute any script into our environment, into our local machine or maybe organization, it is really recommended that we read every single line of that script and we understand it to the core before executing it. Now at line number 27, we are generating the private key for our root certificate. Then at line number 30, we are again executing OpenSSL command that is generating our root certificate. Now there are few parameters that those are hard coded in there, but you can certainly change those according to your location and other parameters. So basically this is generating our root certificate with the validity of 1024 days. After this, we are deciding whether the operating system is Linux or it is Mac operating system. And on basis of that, the root certificate that we have generated at line number 30 will be added as a trusted certificate into your machine. Now, at line number 50 and 51, we are generating the Nexus key, which is private key, and then also the Nexus cert. After that, we are doing few CD changes. We are copying that cert and private key that we have generated at line number 50 and 51. And at line number 61, we are creating nginx Docker image. And at last, at line number 67, we have executed Docker compose to bring nginx and Nexus 3 container all up as a service. Going back to nginx Nexus Docker and then going into nginx folder. Inside this, first of all, let's take a look at configuration file for nginx. Alright, so here we are at nginx.configuration file. Now there are few common configurations such as SSL, and then we are also setting the path for SSL certificate as well as the private key for our Nexus. And then there are three major chunks where we are asking server to listen on specific ports. We are configuring here at port number 443, and whenever nginx server will get the request at port number 443, it is going to redirect that request to Nexus repo at port number 8081. Now Nexus-repo is going to be the name of our Docker container, and Nexus 3 by default consumes 8081 port number. Then we are also configuring server to listen at port number 6666. This is also going to be SSL kind of request, and whenever nginx will get a request at port number 6666, it is going to redirect it to Nexus-repo at port number 5555. We are going to use port number 6666 for Docker proxy registry. Then similar kind of setup we are doing with port number 7777, and whenever nginx server will get request on 7777, it is going to redirect it to Nexus 3 at port number 4444, and we are going to use this port for Docker hosted registry. Now switching over to Docker file, which is very simple. So we are taking the base image as nginx and alpine flavor. Then we are running and making a directory etc nginx external. We are copying our certificate file and PAM file into the nginx image that we are building. And finally, we are copying nginx.configuration file also into the image. Now this is one issue I ran into, that I was initially using latest version of nginx as a base image. The issue I faced was that I wasn't able to bring that Docker container up. So in case if you also face that same issue, maybe try changing it to Alpine, and with some either latest version of Alpine or maybe -1, -2 version of Alpine. So give it a shot. Maybe it is just me or my machine that was giving the issue. At last, Docker Compose YAML file. So let's take a quick look at that. Services nginx-nexus proxy. This is the image that we are going to build using our shell script, and then we are mapping ports 443 to 443 and so on for Docker proxy and hosted registry. Then we have Nexus-repository also. We are using image as Sonatype Nexus3 being pulled from Docker Hub, and we are mapping it with the volume. All right, so now we can switch over to our terminal and execute few commands to see how everything is working out. Going to my repository just so I can copy the URL for Git. Copied. Switching over to my terminal. All right, write git clone. Okay, ls. All right, so cd into nginx repository. Here we have got Docker Compose YAML, nginx, and scripts. So first of all, we can go into scripts folder to execute our Nexus nginx proxy script. ls. All right. Now, one thing to remember is that even though you are working on your Mac, you have to execute Nexus nginx proxy as a sudo. So we write sudo nexus nginx proxy.sh, and then we'll pass this string as a parameter. Now I am using password as a challenge phrase for the root certificate. You just to keep it simple, actually I'm using password, but you can use any other string that can act as a challenge phrase for your certificate. So hit enter. It is asking for my sudo password. Entered, and it is executing. All right. Okay, so let's see what all things it has done. It's generated root private key, and it has generated private key for Nexus. So over here it is building our Docker image from nginx alpine, and image is built successfully, tagged with nginx nexus proxy latest. Then it has created our Docker containers, basically ran our service that brought nginx as well as Nexus repository. All right, so let's quickly verify if our Docker containers are running. Okay, so we have two containers running, nginx as well as our Nexus repository. Then we can switch over to our keychain access. We see our local certificate is added, which is basically a root certificate added into trusted source. And then we can try hitting the local host at port number 443. Localhost. Okay, so it may take from few seconds to maybe up to 1 minute where you will see 502 bad gateway, because currently, even though your containers are up, nginx server as well as your Nexus 3 is basically coming up. It is taking a little bit of time to prepare itself. So you may see this error at the very beginning, and maybe after a few seconds we'll just refresh it and that error is gone. Now our Nexus 3 and nginx setup is ready to use. So once we are in here, first of all we have to sign in as administrator so we can create our Docker proxy as well as hosted repositories. So go to sign in. Now the first time password is what we have to bring from Nexus container. Alright, so we'll now switch to our terminal to get the password out of our Nexus 3 container. So do docker ps, that will give us the container ID for our Nexus 3 container. Let's copy this and execute a command, docker exec container ID, and we want to see the data content basically of file that is placed into admin.password. Okay, so you will also get somewhat similar string in your system. So copy this and switch back to your browser. Username is admin, paste your password in here and sign in. Now this one-time wizard will allow you to set up the passwords. So just change your password basically. So set any password. For simplicity, I'm just gonna give admin, confirm the password and say next. For simplicity, again, I will do enable anonymous access and finish. All right, so now we are logged in as administrator. So here we see a gear sign. Let's click on that and then go to repositories. Inside repositories, go to create repository. Now from here, we'll create Docker hosted as well as Docker proxy repository. So the port numbers that we were looking for, we can take a quick look at one of the slides that I have prepared. So this is how our port mapping looks like. This is our host machine ports. 443 of host machine is mapped with 443 of nginx container, whereas 6666 is port is configured with 6666 and so on with 7777. But when it goes from nginx to nexus container, 443 redirects it to 8081, 6666 redirect it to 5555, which is going to be our Docker proxy registry, and then 7777 port of nginx container is redirecting it to 4444 port number of nexus container, which is going to be our Docker hosted registry. Now switching back to our Nexus 3 repository, and let's try creating Docker proxy repository at first. Let's give it a name, Docker external, and create an HTTP at port number 5555. We can allow anonymous Docker pull, and this has another catch here which we'll take a look soon. Then we select use Docker Hub, and there is this watermark text in here, so you can copy it and enter this into URL. All right, so use Docker Hub is selected. Now you can scroll down and keep everything as is. And now let's create a repository. Our Docker proxy registry is created. Now similarly, we are going to create repository, another Docker registry, which is going to be hosted this time. We'll call it, let's say, Docker internal. Select an HTTP and give it a port number 4444. Maybe allow anonymous Docker poll and keep everything as is and create the repository. All right, so we have created our Docker proxy repository registry as well as Docker hosted registry. So now is the right time to verify our setup, whether we can pull through our repositories, our Docker registries or not. So let's go to browse and here we have our repositories. Switch over to terminal. To connect with our Docker registry, local Docker registry, we will run docker login localhost at port number 666. Now this is proxy repository we are talking about. And along with this, we can give username, and my password was admin, so I'm just giving same password. And here we see this error, failed with status 401 unauthorized. So this is one another catch here. Let's switch back to our Nexus repository, go to settings, and under security, go to realms, select Docker bearer token realm, and put it into active and move up into the priority. Save it. Now let's go back to our terminal and execute the same command again. Alright, so this time login succeeded. This is one another very important point because we allowed anonymous access, and that require that realm to include Docker bearer token, and that too up in priority. So our login is succeeded here. Now we can try pulling some images through our Docker registry, localhost port number 666 and Java. All right, so it is pulling Java image through our Docker proxy registry, and download is complete, extracting. All right, so now we can quickly switch over to our browser, go to browse server contents, browse Docker external. Great, so here we see our Java Docker image is being pulled through our Docker proxy registry. Now the next verification is to push an image into Docker hosted registry. We'll switch over to our terminal. Let's see what images we have that we can just use and push into our repository. Okay, so we have nginx Nexus proxy that we can use. So let's copy this, and all right. So first of all, we'll tag the image. So docker tag nginx Nexus proxy, and we'll tag it with our hosted repository and call it nginx Nexus proxy with maybe version 1.0. Hit enter. Alright, so the repository is tagged now. Now we'll do docker push, and let's copy this and Control V. Alright, so our image is just got pushed into Docker hosted registry. So we'll switch over to our browser and refresh it. Here we go. So nginx Nexus proxy, we have tags 1.0 available that we have provided, and everything is working. All right, so we have got our Docker proxy as well as hosted registry. We tested pull and push. both, and even Docker login. Um, Everything is working fine. So this is how easy it is to implement this entire architecture. All right. I hope this content has helped you today. If you like the content, then hit like button and subscribe the channel. Feel free to leave feedback in the comment section. Goodbye and take care until I see you next.